Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're jumping straight into a fascinating deep dive of Quranic Surah 16, widely known as the Bee. We are going to explore how a really close textual reading of this specific chapter takes the whole concept of human religious bureaucracy and literally dismantles it. If you've been looking for a highly structured, totally direct understanding of the source material, without all those external frameworks getting in the way, you are absolutely in the right place. So, what exactly does the precise navigation of a tiny bee have to do with human accountability? It's kind of a wild question, isn't it? But as you'll see, the source text here doesn't just use the natural world as some pretty poetic imagery. It uses it as a literal template for engaging directly with divine guidance. It sets up this incredible blueprint for how we can understand our own built-in compass. Okay, let's get right into it. The text opens with this really striking paradox. The command of Allah has come, so do not be impatient for it. It hits right at the core of human impatience. You know how people are always demanding immediate proof, instant validation, or lightning bolt consequences? Well, the opening basically says, reality operates entirely on its own timeline. It doesn't care about our demands for instant gratification. And right after dropping that opening paradox, it does something totally unexpected. It doesn't hand you a dense theological argument. It doesn't give you a checklist of rituals. Instead, it launches into this extended, super detailed meditation on the observable universe. It actually frames reality itself as the primary, direct evidence we're supposed to be looking at.
It just rapidly fires off this sequence of natural elements. We're talking everything from the massive macro level of the heavens and the earth, right down to human biology, livestock, rivers, mountains, the stars, the rain. This physical universe isn't just a decorative backdrop for the text, it's a cohesive, systematic presentation of evidence, and it demands conscious, active reflection from us.
Now here's where it gets really fascinating. Look at the specific Arabic language used to describe who this evidence is actually for. The word yakilun comes from a root that means to bind, restrain, or to comprehend through deliberate, intentional thought. So these signs in nature, they aren't meant for passive viewing. They are specifically for people who actively engage their capacity to reason. It's the exact opposite of blind acceptance or unthinking compliance.
So let's zoom in a bit. We're going from the massive gravity of galaxies right down to the tiny, buzzing mechanics of the humble bee. This brings us directly to the namesake of the chapter itself, where the text connects that grand metaphor of the whole universe to the precise meaning of individual purpose.
And here we have the actual operational instructions given to the bee. And your Lord inspired the bee to take houses from the mountains, then consume from all fruits and follow the paths of your Lord. There is something incredibly profound hidden in these instructions. The bee produces this amazing healing substance for society just by executing its natural design. It simply follows its built-in programming perfectly.
Which brilliantly illustrates the core thesis here. The Arabic word used for what the bee receives is wahi. In this context, it translates to inspiration or a built-in directive. The bee operates purely on this built-in wahi. Think about it. It doesn't attend seminars, it doesn't consult clerics, and it sure doesn't need a complex hierarchy of human intermediaries to figure out how to navigate or make honey. It just operates exactly according to its innate design. Well, you look at the flawless instinct of the bee, and it naturally brings us to the human problem. Unlike the bee, we humans have a real knack for complicating things. And this introduces a major theme in Surah 16, a really severe critique of how humans complicate natural guidance by constructing these dense, rule-bound systems.
The text sets up this stark, side-by-side contrast between two approaches to truth. On one side, it heavily advocates for direct engagement with observable reality and universal principles. But on the other side, it absolutely shreds the blind following of inherited systems, justifying actions simply because it's what our fathers did. Unexamined tradition that demands your compliance through arbitrary secondary authorities is treated as a direct competitor to actual truth.
So you're probably thinking, okay, if not traditional authorities, who do we turn to? The text mentions asking the al-Dhikr, or the people of the reminder. But there's a huge, crucial distinction to make here. This phrase consistently refers to people who directly engage with the revealed text, the reminder itself. It is absolutely not referring to some inherited priestly class or an exclusive institutional bureaucracy. It is entirely about knowledge of the text, not institutional rank.
And the text takes this responsibility very, very seriously.
Verse 1625 lays down an undeniable heavy burden regarding accountability. Passing on unexamined assumptions as truth or misleading others without actual knowledge, بغير علم, carries massive consequences. You aren't just accountable for your own actions, you're accountable for the untruths you propagate, even if you're just doing it through simple ignorance of the text.
So what is the actual scope of this guidance? If we aren't supposed to rely on inherited traditions, what are we left with? Well, the text is remarkably explicit about its own completeness.
The answer is captured right here in verse 1689. The phrase tibian lakuli she literally means a clarification of everything. This means the text is claiming to be a complete exposition of everything within its scope as guidance. It's totally self-sufficient. It requires no supplemental external sources and absolutely no secondary literature to resolve disputes regarding its guidance.
Which begs the question, if the book is already complete, what was the messenger's actual job? Verses 1635 and 1664 define the messenger's role specifically as al-balag al-mubin, the clear delivery. The messenger's explicit, singular role was to be a pristine deliverer who makes the text clear to the people. His role was not to be a secondary legislator or some kind of editor who piles complex, dense ritual systems on top of an already completed book.
This actually leads us to one of the most powerful visual metaphors in the text. Imagine a strongly spun thread being completely unraveled into useless, frayed pieces. It's a stark, urgent caution against fragmentation. It's warning us against taking what was originally a unified, cohesive way of living, an ummah, and deliberately shattering it into competing, fragmented religious sects or opposing factions.
Because instead of those fragmented, hyper-complicated procedures, the text provides a unified ethical core. Verse 1690 is essentially the ultimate rulebook breakdown. It decisively prioritizes universal human ethics over rigid, tribal, or sectarian performances every single time.
Just look at this brilliant ethical matrix from verse 1690. It completely bypasses dense legalistic technicalities. It lays out 3 absolute commands: maintaining justice, optimizing excellence, and caring for relatives. And it contrasts those with 3 strict prohibitions: avoiding gross immorality, rejected acts, and oppression. These aren't complicated rituals. They are absolute, fundamental values that can be lived anywhere, by anyone, without any institutional mediation.
Because the text heavily prioritizes these clear, universal ethics, it gives a really strict warning against manufacturing new religious laws. Verse 16:116 literally forbids the act of iftirah, or fabrication. You cannot arbitrarily declare things lawful or forbidden simply based on human preference, or as a way to exert control over human behavior. Adding prohibitions without a textual basis is framed strictly as an invention and a complete falsehood.
And that brings us right back full circle to our big question. If nature, just like our bee, operates perfectly on built-in inspiration without the need for human intermediaries or complex bureaucracies, how does this affect our understanding of our own personal accountability? True accountability is direct, it's unmediated, and it's deeply rooted in applying universal ethical principles to our lives. It's an incredibly empowering way to view our place in the natural order, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining me today to explore this framework, and I can't wait to dive into more fascinating sources with you next time.